There's a reason that we live so far from Hollywood, in the country looking hard to find.
Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada, Hugh Hewitt live, back inside the Beltway, jet lagged and ready to talk. I went to bed at like 6 p.m. yesterday and woke up at 4 a.m. That's just normal whenever you travel abroad. Back. If I didn't have COVID when I left, I'll have it after standing in line at the customs and passport check. I had my COVID negative pass at Washington Dulles, the world's second worst airport after LAX, and an hour and 10 minutes. And we were fast off. I don't have global entry. I don't go abroad enough for global entry. I should get it just for that one time. But the passport booths, there are like 20 of them. They had 4 people working. And hundreds of people arrived at the same time at Dulles. And we all stood in line milling around for an hour and 10 minutes. And no, I'm not masked. I'm vaccinated and had 2 booster shots. And I didn't have COVID before I went. I didn't have it until I got to Dulles. But it really did indicate to me that the government's no longer concerned. Otherwise, they would just be, they'd be waving through the Americans. Come on through. Instead, we just milled around. But I'm back. I'm happy to be back. I am happy to be an American. I'm so glad to live in this country. And even beautiful places like Paris, even moving places like Normandy are great to visit, but there's nothing like the good old USA, and I'm glad to be back in it. Here's the latest news. In Russia, in Ukraine, the Russians are getting chewed up. The United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense has been one of the best sources of news on how it goes in Ukraine. They offered a new sense of the scale of Russian losses yesterday afternoon. It is likely that more than a quarter of Russian battalion tactical groups, these are soldiers of between 700 and 800 number, more than a quarter of them are combat ineffective, I mean they can't fight. So the 120 such units committed to Ukraine, 30 of them are out of the game. There's also an amazing story on the Russian tank in the Washington Post today. I've tweeted out the link to it, and I would encourage you to go and read this. It's a death trap. The Germans, the Brit, the United States, we build our tanks so that the ammo for the tank turret is stored in the back, so that a hit on the tank is not necessarily a death sentence for everyone in the crew of the tank. The Russians put the ammunition under the crew. So when one of the Stingers or of the other anti-tank man-pads hits the Russian tank, it explodes, it kills everyone. That's why their tank losses are, they just designed them wrong. And you don't have to be an engineer to read this. Just go over to Twitter, take a look at the graphics. I put the link up. Hit it, you'll look at those graphics and you'll say, how do they ever get anyone to agree to be in a tank? When I next talked to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's a tank guy, I got to ask him about that. It's just, did the Russians not learn anything about anything over the last 3 decades? Boy, they're a bad military. Yesterday, finally, some of the civilians in Mariupol's steelworks, the vast steelworks, got out. And that is, it was amazing to watch, if you watched any of the stories yesterday, the children who've been hiding underground for 2 months in the steelworks coming out. They look pretty good. Moms with their 10-year-old. I'm looking at a picture from the Telegraph right now. It's amazing. It's like the Battle of Stalingrad in 2022. And these children lived in the cellars and in the basements of the steelworks. I'm sure they're going to have memories of this all their long lives, but at least they will have long lives. They got out yesterday. The Russians finally eased up and allowed a humanitarian corridor. The EU has stepped up the Russian oil sanctions. They're finally getting into it. Warmer weather has helped. Warmer weather in Europe. And it was beautiful for the 2 weeks that we were there in France. Now, France is not dependent on Russian natural gas the way that Germany is. But in the 2 weeks that Generalissimo and I were there, it didn't rain a drop. It was sunny in the 60s and 70s. It was beautiful. It might have been the only 2 weeks in the history of Europe that they've ever had no rain and just gorgeous conditions. What that means is that the Russians lost a lot of leverage when it comes to energy. The best story of the morning, though, is in the Washington Post as well. Hacking Russia was off limits. The Ukraine war made it a free-for-all. For more than a decade, U.S. cyber warfare security experts have warned that Russian hacking increasingly uses the labor force of financially motivated criminal gangs to achieve political goals. Prolific ransomware, and I've been hit by that many years ago. We've learned how to defend against it, as most people have. The Colonial Pipeline shut down other attacks. We always thought that they were the big cyber superpower. Turns out they were far more vulnerable than we knew. And it's not the United States government or any other government. It's hackers who hate Russia have gotten together, and they're deeply anonymous, and they know how to do it. They're the kind of people that you can never find, and that hopefully we get them to work for the government and not against us. They have totally shut down Russian banks. They've captured data. They've shut down Russian utilities. They're going to post that data pretty soon. Russia is reeling from cyber. When you become the world's bad guy, the Snidely Whiplash, that will date myself as a boomer, when you become the Snidely Whiplash of the nations, every hacker who wants to be part of the cause, who wants to join the tribe of the White Hats against the Black Hat Russia, they come after you and they coordinate and they share, and boy, have they done a number on Putin. That country is reeling so far backwards. Eventually, well, I don't know if he has a cost-benefit analysis. It's impossible to say if he has a cost-benefit analysis. Last, compliments to the Speaker and to the members of Congress who went with her to Kyiv. We need to do more of that, and I'm glad that she went. I wish some Republicans had gone. The notice went out way too late for the Republicans to join her. I know some Republicans wanted to go, but found out about it with far too little time to go. I understand operational security. The whole Bush in Baghdad trip sort of set the rules for these things, which you have to hold them very, very close. Everything leaks in Capitol Hill. You don't want half dozen of our congressmen shelled by Russians. So I understand what they did, but I might have, if I were the Speaker, have gone to McCarthy, the leader of the Republicans who will be the next Speaker of the House, and said, you want to come to Kyiv, keep this between us. She didn't do that. Beijing has escalated restrictions in response to the rise of COVID in the PRC capital. There's a 5-day holiday that began Saturday, and local officials won't let anyone eat out. It's the annual May Day holiday that communists everywhere celebrates. But they haven't called it an official lockdown, and they don't need a second Shanghai on their hands. We're going to be paying for this for a long, long time. I'll do the market report afterwards. If you own Amazon, you know that Friday it lost 15% of its value. That wiped out like $20 billion of Jeff Bezos' wealth. Don't be alarmed. A lot of this is just supply chain, and the underlying value of companies is the underlying value of companies. You don't buy and sell based upon quarterly results. But the Chinese supply chain generated problems are only going to get worse for people who buy and sell things that depended upon it. Like Apple had a terrible quarter as well. They didn't get slaughtered the same way Amazon did, but they got slaughtered last week because they can't get their stuff. And they can't get their stuff because, if it goes through Shanghai, forget about it. And most of everything goes through Shanghai. In Israel, Bibi Netanyahu has appeared, is beginning to gain ground on his effort to get back into power as the prime minister, as the governing coalition of 8 different parties, which made no sense at the beginning, has begun to fray and fall apart, with 2 members, one kicked out, one not quite kicked out. It's fallen apart. The Taliban's leader made an appearance. He didn't face the camera, and I'm sure the reason he didn't, he's afraid of facial recognition technology, and I'll try and say his name, Hibatullah Akhundzada, told worshippers at the end of Ramadan that Taliban had achieved freedom and security. Right. Meanwhile, in Great Britain, they're asking you not to buy sunflower oil because there are shortages of cooking oil all across the country, and they don't want people to. They don't want to put in rationing of cooking oil. At the same time, they don't want people to have the toilet paper crisis that we had in the United States at the beginning of COVID. COVID cases are in the rise in the United States again, with limited impact. However, those who are dying from it are almost all 75 and older, and it no longer distinguishes between mere vaccination and non-vaccination. It is actually killing as many vaccinated people, because if you haven't got a booster, and I think probably a second booster, that's not in the story, you're not as protected as you need to be. And so if you're over 75, you really ought to go get that second booster. When I come back, I'll talk about the Fed. The Fed is preparing a double-barreled tightening They are preparing to sell off their bonds, raise interest rates, do everything they can because the inflation forecast is a nightmare. So the President of the United States was laughing off inflation at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday night. I didn't see it live. I was waiting in line to get back into the country. But it has made the rounds on the inner tubes, and we will tell you about it when I return. I'm Hugh Hewitt, back live inside the Beltway. Stay with me.
Curious about what you're missing in the Huniverse? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.huniverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.huniverse.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you make the internet safe, then you make the system safer for everyone. Big tech puts black people, black is of course capitalized, people of color, I'm shocked that that's not capitalized, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else. Really? Big tech puts black people, so big tech, which allows constantly for the degradation of people with white skin, but they're putting black people, people of color, that's obviously non-black, non-whites, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway on this Monday, May the 2nd, the year of our Lord 2022. On Friday, it was a ridiculously bad day on the markets. This market update brought to you by our friends at Birch Gold, great sponsors of the show. Find them at hughgold.com. They are the precious metals IRA specialists. They will help you change a portion of your existing IRA or 401k or your old SEP IRA or whatever into a physical precious metals IRA, and they will do so painlessly. They'll also sell you gold if you want to buy some gold, and gold right now is at $1,879 an ounce. It dropped over the weekend. It's a good time to do that if you want to do it. Everything dropped over the weekend except the 10-year Treasury, which is still at 2.887%. On Friday, the Dow was down almost 1,000 points, 939 points, 2.77. Not as bad as the S&P, which was off 155 points, or 3.63, and the NASDAQ, slaughter, down 4.17%, 536 points. Amazon went down 15% on Friday. That's the only stock I own. I own a little Palantir just because it interests me, and then all mutual funds. So, I got slaughtered, but I don't look at my portfolio because investors don't look at their portfolio. Investors invest and they wait, and that brings me to what Warren Buffett said over the weekend to the Financial Times. He bets big on U.S. stock markets. He is buying $51 billion of shares as he put his sprawling conglomerate's cash pile to work as financial markets slid from record highs. It's a dramatic shift from an investor who had been a seller of stocks for the past 2 years, warning of high valuations. He's back all in. What's he see? He sees what we all see, inflation. That's why gold might be the best thing for you. At least have some of it. At least have 5% of your portfolio. Diversify. Concentration is how you grow wealth. Diversification is how you preserve it. Birch Gold will help you preserve the money that you have by making sure some of it is in silver and gold, especially gold, in an IRA that they maintain in an IRS-compliant way. So go to hughgold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 989898 for the free information on Birch Gold. Fed prepares double-barreled tightening with a bond runoff, according to the Wall Street Journal yesterday. To support financial markets and the economy during the pandemic, the Federal Reserve more than doubled its asset portfolio. That means they were just printing money. They were buying money with made-up money. They were buying bonds and stocks, and they got to a mammoth $9 trillion balance sheet. But that's all made up. So the officials are going to announce Wednesday how they are going to get rid of these holdings and shrink them. And they first undertook this technique under Ben Bernanke, dubbed quantitative easing during the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis. The Fed's short-term interest rate was at zero, so they couldn't cut it. So they just bought stuff to create demand. Now they did the same thing during the COVID, and they've got $9 trillion of stuff that they bought, U.S. Treasury. It's just paper money, and they got to get rid of it. They got to get back to real currency, stop degrading the currency. So they've decided to do that, and that's why markets are so jittery. Amazon and Apple sold off for reasons unique to their stocks, but the market overall sold off because they don't know what the Fed's going to do. I don't think they can stop raising interest rates. They really don't. They can't. They've got to kill inflation. If you saw the president laughing, it was the worst visual of the night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Trevor Noah. I swear to you, I've never seen a minute of Trevor Noah until the clip of this. Trevor Noah talking about the inflation out there, and the president laughing. That was bad. Well, let's listen to it. Cut number 3.
I think ever since you've come into office, things are really looking up. Gas is up, rent is up, food is up, everything. No, it really has been a tough first year for you, Mr. President.
And so the president laughed and laughed at that, and the RNC was very, very quick to get down this clip and send it everywhere. So everyone has seen the president laughing at inflation. It's not a laughing matter. Even if you go to the thing and they make a joke, it's not a laughing matter. And this is in poor taste. Cut number 4.
This is the first time the president attended this dinner in 6 years. It's understandable. We had a horrible plague, followed by 2 years of COVID.
So you see, if you think that's funny, the White House Correspondents Association is for you. I'll be right back. America, don't go anywhere. Lots more happened over the weekend when I was flying and you were enjoying, and it's Monday and it's time to get back to work, and we're doing so right here on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
They're not objective. Edward R. Murrow ought to be rolling in his grave. Now, let me just ask you flat out, and I really want to get your honest assessment of this. Are you comfortable and are you glad that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are in Congress? Or are you like my friend Mark Davis, who sort of wishes that people like MTG would sort of pump the brakes a little bit on the rhetoric, on the over-the-top, in-your-face, persona? I just think we need more Marjorie Taylor Greenes and less Mitt Romneys. I think we need fighters if we're going to have a chance.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith that one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real?
Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back.
This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Those who self-describe as very liberal, 39% thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every single year. 8% thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year. Those who just described as liberal, not very liberal, half of them thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. The year they did the survey, the police killed 12. Yet half of those who are liberal in this country believe the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. No wonder they're upset. If I thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year, I'd be in the streets yelling and screaming too. My point is, they are ill-informed. They are ignorant. So part of the reason that they're so angry is because they are so completely, totally ill-informed.
Keep up with what's trending on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The kind of work that establishment Republicans are too gutless to do. They're willing to stand up and say, we've got to fight because they don't play right. They don't play fair. They're dirty. They play dirty. And if we don't stand up, we're going to lose our country. We're losing our country. We got now we're going to get a truth ministry czar under Homeland Security. Some crazy woman. If you watch that video at Salem News Channel of her singing Mary Poppins, you think I took a camera into the mental ward and filmed one of the patients. She's got an important government position, and apparently she's going to be in a position to shut you and me up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for tuning in. It's the first broadcast day of the month, so I briefly tell every new listener who you're listening to. I'm Hugh. I'm born and raised in Warren, Ohio. In 1956, I'm 66 years old. Happily married, 40 years this summer. I'm coming up on that 40th anniversary. I have to figure out some sort of a present to the fetching Mrs. Hewitt. 3 wonderful children, 2 of them married. I have 3 grandchildren already, and 2 more will be arriving in the next 8 weeks or so, and therefore we're going to be a little bit busy. I think I'll be off a week from Monday doing some grandfatherly duties. And they are all doing great, and everyone's spread around the country. And we make our lives between the East Coast, the West Coast, the northern border, an occasional trip to Florida, and make sure we patrol the southern border as well. We move around quite a lot. But I'm mostly inside the Beltway, mostly telling you what's going on here inside the Beltway. I first came here went to college at Harvard after 12 years of a great Catholic education at John F. Kennedy High School in Blessed Sacrament in Warren, Ohio. And then went off and worked for David Eisenhower, then Richard Nixon in San Clemente for a couple of years when the former president was in his exile. I was helping him write books for The Real War and Leaders. Then left to go to law school when he moved to New York. I made it through 6 months in New York, went in and saw the former president and said, Mr. Nixon, I am not cut out for this city. And I wasn't. I'm a small town guy. I like small town feel, and I did not like Manhattan at all, but made my 6 months there up at Broadway and 110th at the Hogan Hall. For those of you who are Columbia familiar, that's where I sublet for a long, long desert time that was New York City. From there, went off to law school at Michigan. That's the state up north, to those of you. Look at what I got when I was away. If you're watching on the download, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, which you should download and then you could watch this show, I am holding up the wonderful present that arrived in the mail from Sam Sorello. Sam is with the Vigo Importing Company, and Sam is a longtime listener in Tampa. He's called a couple of times. He's always fun to talk to. And out of the blue, he sent me the grinders, the built-in grinders of pepper and salt that are Buckeye grinders. And you can get these, too, if you go to Vigo. I guess it would be vigofoods.com, and you look up their product. They've got licenses with a number of universities. And Ohio State is, you go to Harvard, you have no football team to root for, really. So I've been a Buckeye fan my whole life, even though I went to Michigan Law School, and I got these sent to me over the weekend, and I'm just thrilled with these. The fetching Mrs. Hewitt is not. She's a Cal Aggie, right? She's a Davis grad. She's not thrilled with these. She didn't grow up in Ohio. She's a California lass. And therefore, I have to keep them in the studio to keep them away from her. Also, son number 1 came by and cast a covetous glass. He's a Miami of Ohio grad, and he wanted very much to spirit them away. And I said, no. I have to show those to the listening audience. After law school, I came down and clerked on the D.C. Circuit for Judges Roger Robb, George McKinnon. Did some work because Judge Robb had a stroke. And so a bunch of the judges take care of all the clerks when someone gets sick. That's just the way of the world in Washington, D.C. Partisan divides aren't really as bad as you think they are. So I got cases from Judge Ginsburg, then Justice Ginsburg, but she was a judge on the D.C. Circuit, then Judge Scalia, then Judge Bork, then Judge Skelly Wright, then Judge Spotts Robinson. It was a terrific year. Over to the Department of Justice, worked for 2 Attorney General, Ed Meese and the wonderful William French Smith, both of them great men of the law, great bosses. Over to the White House Counsel's Office, where I worked for Fred Fielding and Dick Hauser. I'm going to have breakfast, I think, with them on Saturday. We had a lovely time in the Reagan White House. Off to the agencies, ended up as the Deputy Director and Acting Director of the Office of Personnel Management through 1989. That's when I went back to California, and we stayed there until 2016. I began this show in July of 2000, right before the 2000 election. I've been here every day since 2000, as has Generalissimo and Adam Youngman, who is the Chief Engineer of the Hugh Hewitt Show, has been here all but a week of that. And General Ben has been our associate producer for now 8 years or 9 years. He's getting ready to make his way off into the wilderness and move up in the world. New fathers don't like to work the night shift in California, which it is. It's the morning shift in the East Coast, but it's the night shift in California at the production studio. And Jacob, who first showed up in the studio when we were in France, so he's always going to be Jacob. His real name is Jacob. He's going to be taking over for him pretty soon. The show's been on the air for 22 years. In that period of time, you've also seen me on every Sunday show. I worked 5 years for NBC. I'll be on Special Report tonight with Brett Baer. That's the only thing I'm doing anymore is Special Report because I just like the news. I like to do the news. I'm a conservative, but I like you to know the truth. You can trust me. That's what we sell. I've done 14 books. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. I write, I think, I talk, I travel. Washington Speakers Bureau sends me around the country every now and then to give my prognostications, which are, like everyone else's prognostications, about 50-50, right and wrong. But we try and predict what's going on. I wish I had been in studio yesterday with Brett over. He was hosting Fox News Sunday, terrific Fox News Sunday by Brett. And they brought in Secretary of Health and Human Services Alejandro Mayorkas because there's this giant eruption of nightmare over the Ministry of Truth that's been established, the Department of Health, of Homeland Security. And Brett asked him about this new opinion police that have been set up over there. Cut number 7.
Yes, I do. And by the way, highly regarded as a subject matter expert, and I don't question her objectivity. There are people in the department who have a diverse range of views, and they're incredibly dedicated to mission. We're not the opinion police. She has testified before Congress a number of times. She's recognized as a tremendous authority, and we're very fortunate to have her.
No, she's not. That's just not true. She's not a tremendous authority. She was anonymous to most people, but her TikTok videos and her other videos are intellectually dishonest and insulting. And she's not an opinion expert. There is no such thing. Everybody is a political appointee. If you're a political appointee, you represent your party. I was in the government for 6 years. I served for 22 years in various appointments. I was always a Republican. I've always been a Republican. That's why this show is different from most radio. I'm just transparent. I am a center-right conservative. And when Brett continues to press him on it, as he always does, fair and balanced, polite, but persistent. Cut number 8, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security says another what she isn't.
Was the Steele dossier disinformation?
It's not for me to opine on that.
Americans are generally...
Brett, great question. And was the Steele dossier misinformation? Of course it was. Of course it was. It was all a lie, and we're learning more as Durham comes out with that. Bravo, Brett. I love that question. I just love that question. Dana Bash, a friend of mine from the debates in 2016, since I'm doing a little bit of bio in the first broadcast. I also did for the the Republican presidential debates in 2016. Hope to do them again in 2024 if there are any. Dana pushed him as well on, again, what do we need an information czar to tell us about disinformation? I'm here. All they have to do is broadcast me everywhere, and you'll know what is true and what isn't. Cut number 6.
Will American citizens be monitored?
No.
Guarantee that.
Well, so what we do, we in the Department of Homeland Security don't monitor American citizens.
You don't, but will this board change that?
No. The board does not have any operational authority or capability. What it will do is gather together best practices in addressing the threat of disinformation from foreign state adversaries, from the cartels, and disseminate those best practices to the operators that have been executing in addressing this threat for years.
All right, now, here's the deal. They've set up this new board to identify disinformation. I volunteer. I am willing to serve. No pay, nothing. I will go and do it. And I've had full field background investigations 3 times. I've been confirmed by the United States Senate. You can call me honorable, because that's a permanent designation when you've gone through the United States Senate. Confirmed 100-0, and ran the OPM for a long time. And so I am willing to serve on this board. I put up my hand. I will serve alongside of the TikTok queen. And I'm not on TikTok. All I do is Twitter. I don't do Facebook or Instagram. I read my children's Instagrams, and I laugh at them. But I'm pretty old school. Give me a pad of paper and a pen, and that's how I like to operate. But I'll be happy to tell you what's true and not true, in my opinion. Let's just see everybody on the board. Because the TikTok queen does not give me, I'm sure she's a nice person. I'm not saying she's an evil person. She's just a greatly partisan person. And we know what partisans do is they do partisan stuff. It's sort of like President Biden and student loans. I've been working on a piece for the Washington Post that'll appear this week. Of course he's going to try and forgive student loans. It will be illegal. It will be unlawful. But it will take us a few months to get the United States Supreme Court to say you can't do that. And so he'll get the political benefit of it, and he's going to do that. He just is. But I want to go back to this disinformation board. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida spoke out about it at a press conference, cut number 1.
As if they don't have enough issues to deal with, they now have an idea, and I honestly thought this was just a belated April Fool's joke, but they are actually going to create, in the Department of Homeland Security, a Bureau of Disinformation. It's basically a ministry of truth. And what they want to do is they want to be able to put out false narratives without people being able to speak out and fight back. They want to be able to say things like Russia collusion and perpetuate hoaxes and then have people like us be silenced. They want to be able to advocate for COVID lockdowns. They want to be able to advocate for school closures, things that are not supported by the evidence, but then when you speak out, they want to stifle dissent. And so we reject this bureau in the state of Florida.
Good for Ron DeSantis. And that's what everyone, nobody wanted this. Where did this come from? Who said, oh, we need a government panel to decide what is true and not true? There's a vast array of media sources. You are listening to me right now, so you trust me. And good, you should trust me. I will only tell you the truth. You should trust me, and you should gather up information on everything from a variety of sources. If you want to know about the election cycle, Salem is the executive producer of a brand new documentary by Dinesh D'Souza called 2,000 Mules. Go and watch that. Go if you want to get one point of view on what happened in 2020 in the election. If you want a different point of view, go and read left-wing critics of Dinesh's movie. And Salem executive produced it again. I always want to disclose that. But I tell you, you can find something on anything everywhere. We don't need the government to point. When the government points, look the other way. When the government says that's disinformation, don't believe them. Do not believe it. Make up your own mind. What aren't we interested in? Well, I'll save that. I'll save that for a little bit later. I'm so glad to be back in the United States because I've got my relief factor right here with me. I don't have to run around and get my guests who were along with us on the trip. Ed, thank you again. Peggy, thank you again. They dipped into their relief factor supply cabinet to keep me up and moving when I was in France for the last couple of weeks. And now I'm back and I have my relief factor in the studio. I take it every morning. They're great sponsors of the show, but I take it anyway. Even if they weren't sponsors of the show, I carried in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. That's what I take every single day, and I'll be back out there. I took the day off yesterday, fetching Mrs. Hewitt, went galloping around and did her steps and walking, and et cetera. And I didn't. I just said, I don't feel like doing anything today, so I'm not going to do anything today. And I just sat and read and talked to son number 1 as he came by and caught up and took some great friends. Had a wonderful early dinner before we battled the traffic at Reagan to drop them off. Never go to Reagan Airport. I have 2 points of view for you. Never go to Dulles Airport and never go to Reagan Airport. And that pretty much means don't come to the Beltway. If you come into the Dulles National Airport, you'll stand in line for an hour and 10 minutes with hundreds of thousands of people just to get your... that is an exaggeration for the benefit of people. It was hundreds of people. But if you take your relieffactor.com, at least your back won't hurt when you do that. Relieffactor.com. Salena Zito is next, America. Stay tuned.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening. Salena Zito writes for the New York Post, the Washington Examiner, quotes the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where she just had a column on Mike Doyle, which I just posted. Good morning, Salena. How are things in Yinzerland?
Good morning, sunshine. It's doing okay. How about you?
Great. I'm back in the country, and I wanted to check in with you about the Ohio Senate GOP primary, which is tomorrow. And Ohio votes tomorrow. How does Salena Zito, who covered it extensively, and I think you probably talked to all 5 of the Republican candidates who are in the hunt, how does it look to you?
Well, I'll actually be at the MZR tomorrow night covering the results coming in Youngstown, so I'm pretty excited about that. Back in back in February, I made the assessment that if J.D. Vance continued to do what he was doing, no matter whether Trump endorsed him or not, he to me seemed on the trajectory to win because he was doing the things that voters wanted. He was going into small towns, medium towns, suburbs, rural areas, and just listening to voters and just sort of, just doing those small retail events and knocking on doors, much the same way that Dave McCormick is doing in Pennsylvania, and much the same way that Brian Kemp has done in Georgia. And I think this is a year that matters.
And so I don't know if Pittsburgh, where you live, picks up any of the Ohio media. I'm told that every single ad on every single media market, and there are a few. There's, of course, Cleveland and Cincinnati, but there's also Columbus and Toledo and Dayton and the Youngstown Warren local station 2233, those sorts of things, 2133, and I can't remember that 27. What is it? Who's winning the air war?
Well, we are getting our own in Pennsylvania. We are getting swamped in the our own Senate race. So I haven't seen how the ads have been running. However, I have heard, and I've looked at all their ads. Again, I still go back. My gut says Vance, and this has, by the way, this has nothing to do with Trump. My gut still says Vance has had the most effective way of reaching voters.
Okay, now I want to remind everyone else, Josh Mandel is in the race, Jane Timken is in the race, Mike Gibbons is in the race, Matt Dolan is in the race. The last fellow has been putting the last splurge on. I mean, he's gained the most, but I don't know that if he's gained enough to catch Vance. Do you?
That is absolutely true. He has become the insurgent candidate. Now, had this happened even 2 weeks ago, it could have mattered. However, he's just surged too late, and that's the clock's going to run out on him. That's the challenge for Dolan.
And the clock, of course, strikes midnight at whatever is the time that the voting ends tomorrow in Ohio. I'll be bringing you the results on Wednesday. Everyone's had exactly the same number of minutes on the Hugh Hewitt show because I don't have a dog in the fight. I've covered it as fairly as I can. I don't know that there is a dominant issue in Ohio other than inflation, and they all kind of agree on that, don't they?
Well, inflation, but also the border. And for not for the reasons that people might think, because they think, Arizona, Texas, California, the things that we see there. No, it's the fentanyl and the meth. It is those deaths, those overdose deaths that are epidemic proportions, especially in the Appalachian portion of Ohio and along the Steel Valley that you and I know so well. And so the border and also crime, I mean, it's all the same issues that are upsetting on a national level are really the same problem on a local level, and the ineffectiveness of Democrats to address those issues. I mean, that is Tim Ryan's sort of big challenge. Tim Ryan 10 years ago, I believe, would have walked away with this race. I don't think so today. That's come November.
That's come November. Now, Jane Timken is the only woman in the race. I've often said the last man standing is usually the only woman in a race with one woman and many men. I don't know that works anymore. I think most people are dialed in. Voters are always smart, but they also aren't gender-driven as much as they used to be 20 and 30 years ago. What's your assessment of Jane, who's been out? We got a minute. She's been out on the road with Rob Portman, who endorsed her.
Yeah, I mean, and Rob Portman, as you know, was an amazing campaigner. But this is a very issue-driven campaign. I mean, an issue-driven year. It's also a very inside-outside year. That's her challenge because she's seen as the establishment. So in an inside-outside year, you are going to see someone more like Vance or Dolan have a successful year, as opposed to someone like Timken or Mandel, who tend to be seen as establishment because they've held office. And
Mike Gibbons, of course, also on the outside, very much so. Three outsiders, two people who've been around for a long time, Mandel and Timken. It'll be fascinating. I mean, it could be close. We'll be studying it for a long time. Salena Zito and I will be talking about it next week when it's in the books. Ohio votes tomorrow. Pennsylvania votes in 3 weeks. Don't go anywhere, America. Hour number 2. Thank you, Salena Zito. Everything Salena Zito is found at salenazito.com. I'll be right back. Hour number 2 of the Monday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show straight ahead.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit. Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God comes.
You ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermano. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Yeah, you know, also I'm thinking of, as you speak about the effects that riots have on cities that are basically left behind. Think of the Watts riots. I mean, listen. Right. I would go to Watts. I would go to Compton. I would go to Linwood. You look at Watts. Watts didn't recover. It's insane. And what frustrates me, Larry, you could go back to the educational system. You can go back to government schools. I didn't learn about handling money. I didn't learn about property value. Any of this basic stuff that should be taught, in my opinion, as early as grade school or at least middle school. So it's funny. I remember the L.A. riots. I mean, clearly, it literally started with Reginald Denny, and I forget the gentleman's name that threw the brick at his head. My girlfriend at the time lived.
Damian Football Williams.
Oh, that's right, man. Great memory, Larry. Yeah, I remember my girlfriend lived right around the corner at the time. I was freaking out, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I had a ghetto fabulous mentality. I didn't like seeing that, but I was singing Ice Cube and all this kind of nonsense. But in the end, we lost. The black community lost.
That's right. And in 1992, the police chief was Daryl Gates. And throughout the history of L.A., every police chief had been a white male. Well, since then, we had back-to-back black police chiefs, Willie Williams and Bernard Parks. And right now, the LAPD reflects the demographic diversity of Los Angeles exactly. L.A. is about 40% Hispanic, as is the LAPD, 30% white, as is the LAPD, and the rest are blacks and Asian Americans, as is the LAPD. And still, you have a bunch of activists talking about systemic racism.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Award-winning filmmakers Stephen Barber and Matthew Housley, along with producer Tamara Henry, bring you the world's most dangerous paper route. Never-before-seen images from legendary Stars and Stripes military newspaper.
In a way, the hometown newspaper of the U.S. military.
Well, everybody read it. In the field, in particular, people were hungry for it. And there were no punches pulled. We knew what was going on in the state.
Don't worry about the bullet with your name on it. Worry about those flying around that say to whom it may concern.
I had a choice between going to Armed Forces Network or to Stars and Stripes, and I'd pick Stars and Stripes.
Join Vanilla Fire Productions as they head downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait to follow the world's most dangerous paper route.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
To peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Here's the second tweet that they said led to his permanent suspension. Quote, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. He informed the country he wasn't going to attend Biden's inauguration. His prerogative, right? Did that incite violence? Why would you be violent if Trump didn't go to Biden's inauguration? Trust me, if you hate Trump, you didn't want Trump to go to Biden's inauguration. You were glad he didn't go." Now listen to this. This is from the Twitter. We assessed these two tweets under our glorification of violence policy, which aims to prevent the glorification of violence that could inspire others to replicate violent acts, and determined that they were highly likely to encourage and inspire people to replicate the criminal acts that took place at the Capitol on January 6th. I think Elon Musk took one look at that and said, "You're full of crap, and I'm buying your butts. I'm buying your fannies, and I'm going to show you how free speech works." And Trump needs to come back to Twitter. He has an obligation to go back to Twitter. Game, set, match. Because if you can explain or defend Twitter's permanent suspension of Donald Trump, you call me right now and we will put you to the top of the line. I promise. 1-800-655-MIKE. 800-655-6453. What a bunch of jerks.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Sticking up for little kids, not wanting them to get groomed, not wanting them to be abused, and shame on them for intervening against us. But that's what they did. That's who they are on the side of the teachers' unions. So anyway, the Friedrichs fix was the unions went into the state houses that they control, teach people with the truth that they no longer have to fund these unions. So that's why we made this movie, Whose Children Are They? That's why we started our group for Kids and Country, and I wrote a book, and we did all this just to educate people on, you don't have to pay these wicked unions anymore. And yes, they are wicked. I'll say it. What they're doing is wicked.
Keep up with what's trending on salemnewschannel.com.
morning, glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt back live inside the Beltway after 2 weeks in France, and I'm glad to be home, and I'm glad to be talking to Jake Sherman of punchbowlnews.com. If you do not get your morning email from punchbowlnews.com, you got to sign up for it. It's absolutely free, and it does bring you up to speed every single morning, and I always talk to Jake on Monday. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Hugh. How are you?
Good. You may not believe this, but I did not watch the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I was standing in line at Passport Control forever at Dulles when that went down. So I don't know if you got hit with any of the shrapnel. I saw some of my friends got scorched by Trevor Noah. How about you?
I did not get scorched. I was not there. I am getting over COVID. But I watched a little bit, but not enough to make an educated assessment of the night.
Well, I'll tell you that I've only gone once. I wasn't invited this year, but I will never go again. I went the Sarah Huckabee year, the low point of the White House Correspondents Association. I said, I'm never doing this again. So I don't bring up the jokes because I think it's not fair to have 6 professional writers have Trevor Noah make fun of you. That's just not fair. Jake, I want to ask you about Punchbowl News this morning. I read it so closely that I actually see when you make a mistake. Today you referred to Matt Dolan as Mike Dolan in the Punchbowl News. Yeah, and so that's how closely I read it for people. I just tell you that you're right. He's the insurgent. He's the guy who's creeping up, Matt Dolan. But J.D. Vance, I did not know that the president mangled his name. The president could guest host for me because I mangle every name. I might call you John Sherman before the end of this. But what do you make of the Ohio Senate race, the Pennsylvania? My rule is if it's a 2-person race, the president makes a difference. See North Carolina. If it's a 3, 4, or 5-person race, not too sure that the former president matters all that much. What say you, Jake Sherman?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think also, on the other hand, I think we're seeing polls, Hugh, and I think we've talked about this once or twice, but we've seen polls that indicate that the president's endorsement is not totally dispositive in these races. I mean, you see that in Pennsylvania, where Mehmet Oz is the leader, but not by a huge margin. I think that's right. I think that generally speaking, Senate races are about who has a connection to the individual and who feels like the individual, whether voters feel like the individual has a certain connection to the state. I think people are questioning that with Oz in Pennsylvania for sure. And in Ohio, I think it's just Mandel's a complicated candidate. He has lost, and he has been a statewide elected official. He has lost once. I just think that he's not completely dispositive. But what you see, and I know you see this, Hugh, because you follow this stuff closely, what Trump does is he also endorses, he talks about his win record, but he then goes and endorses someone like Jackie Walorski in Indiana and Jim Banks in Indiana, who I know you're friendly with, who have no competition. So it pads his win record, which is a nice thing for him.
Well, I go back to Ohio race. I've had each of the candidates on exactly the same number of times. I think I'm in within 2 minutes of each of them in terms of airtime. The last one I interviewed was Matt Dolan last week, and Matt was very, very candid. He said more than a third of Ohio voters refuse to answer the question. They say they're undecided. So it could surprise everyone tomorrow. It could be Jane Timken, the last woman standing in a race with 5 candidates, only one of whom is a woman. Could be Mike Gibbons, the avuncular VC, who is just so Ohio. He's like everybody I ever met at a boosters meeting for the high school football team. Matt Dolan is a hardworking candidate. I mean, the guy's been everywhere in the state, but so has JD and Josh. It's a fascinating race, Jake. You could write a book on that race.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and then you go to the Democratic side. I don't think that, absent Republicans nominating somebody who ends up being a disaster, I think it's going to be really tough for Tim Ryan or whoever comes out of that Democratic primary, just because Ohio it's just not the purple state that it was several years ago, Hugh. I mean, I remember when I started covering Congress, we had Ohio had a delegation that was just not down the middle red and blue, but Eastern Ohio had a bunch of Democrats representing it, and there were just Democrats all over the state. Now there are far fewer Democrats in the Buckeye State.
Yeah, Hugh's rule is never say anything bad about a colleague, a former colleague, or a friend. Tim Ryan is my friend and has been for 25 years. So I'm not going to be talking much about Tim as this race goes forward. But I will talk about Ohio. Ohio's a deep red state. Missouri went deep red first. then Ohio, and now Pennsylvania, Jake Sherman, is going deep red. And it's because of demographic change, and there are factors which no candidate can overcome. When you wrote about the progressive Congress endorsing in the Democratic primary, that was news to me, because, of course, I don't follow that race all that close. But I was fascinated by your rundown on that. Tell people about that.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting situation. This is the seat that Marcia Fudge, who's now the HUD director, HUD secretary, used to hold in Ohio. And so this is a race between Shontel Brown and Nina Turner. Shontel Brown won this race when Fudge resigned to take a cabinet post. Nina Turner was kind of the darling of the left. She got endorsements from Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Progressive Caucus. She got endorsements from Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But now Shontel Brown, not Nina Turner, is the member of Congress, and Shontel Brown is somebody who has now gotten the endorsement of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And this has rankled some Democrats because progressives lined up behind Nina Turner last time. Now they're lining up behind Shontel Brown. It's caused some consternation, let's say, to say the least, in that Progressive Caucus, where people believe that members are joining the Progressive Caucus just to head off primary challenges. Now, the Progressive Caucus is big. It has a lot of sway in the Democratic caucus, which is trending progressive. You have to acknowledge that, and it is something that we are keeping a close eye on, because the story of the progressives on Capitol Hill is the story of the Democratic Party right now. I mean, Hugh, when I started, this ties it back into Ohio, to what we were talking about before. When I started covering Congress 13 years ago, the Democratic caucus, the biggest block, the most significant block was Blue Dogs, was the Zach Spaces and I'm blanking on other names right now, but all those Ohio, Steve Driehaus.
Stupak, Bart Stupak.
Bart Stupak, exactly, from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, who were just able to do whatever. They were all Joe Manchin, let's put it that way.
Yes.
They were able to do whatever they wanted with legislation. Now it's the story of the Progressive Caucus. And the Progressive Caucus is what sways everything on Capitol Hill, and it's the story of the Democratic caucus right now.
And what's interesting to me, Jake, on the other side, the Freedom Caucus has shrunk in its influence and numbers as Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise consolidate power over the caucus. I want to ask you briefly about the Ministry of Truth that has been established. I know that DHS rejects that. Secretary Mayorkas did almost the full Ginsburg yesterday, trying to tell everything, nothing to worry about. I can't imagine Democrats in Congress are happy about this. It's just another storyline. When I played Ron DeSantis riffing on it for a full minute, when poor Secretary Mayorkas, I'm even feeling bad for the guy anticipating his next hearing, and they're going to run through the TikTok videos of what's her name? I don't even know her name. Jankowicz? Yeah, Jankowicz is the new Minister of Truth over at DHS. Why would they? Do you think Ron Klain knew this was coming? It's another rake they didn't have to step on, and they stepped on it.
I don't know if Klain knew. I have no idea about that. I saw that Mayorkas kind of was squirming a little bit on the Sunday shows, had a tough time, not a tough time, but an uncomfortable time with this. I know Dana Bash on State of the Union, and I know that Mayorkas kind of said it was a small group in DHS, and he said we probably could have done a better job communicating what it does and what it does not do. And it's trying to what DHS has said is that it's a necessity in preventing disinformation that is from other nations that is a threat to the homeland. So this appears to be a way to weed out some disinformation, some propaganda from other countries. But listen, I think this ties into the overarching theme of the election, which was the overarching theme of the 2010 election, or one of the overarching themes to this election, which is that people feel the government has grown too powerful, too big, too bulky, too invasive in other people's lives, and that's a problem.
And it's deeply incompetent. By the way, I volunteered this morning to join this board of disinformation specialists because I've been pointing out disinformation. But when Brett Baer asked the DHS secretary yesterday, it was the Russian dossier disinformation, and he couldn't answer that. Told me everything I need to know about this, Jake. Quickly, I want to wrap up. The president's numbers are so low, they got a little bit of bounce because you can fall off the floor, but I think it's what the proverbial dead cat bounce is. Is there anything he can do other than forgive student loans to bolster his numbers, which is why I think he's going to forgive student loans? 20 seconds, Jake.
Yeah, the economy has to turn around. Inflation has to go down. That's the main gist of it. And a lot of that, some of that's in his control, some of it's out of his control.
And it seems like the cake is baked, as you say in Punchbowl News this morning, 190 days to the vote. Can't turn an economy around in 190 days. Jake Sherman, Punchbowl News. Go subscribe, punchbowlnews.com. Come back right here to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear this wall down. Today's Republicans say, tear down Mickey Mouse's house. And pretty soon they'll be storming Cinderella's castle, you can be sure of it.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Yeah, also, I'm thinking of, as you speak about the effects that riots have on cities that are basically left behind, think of the Watts riots. I mean, listen, right. I would go to Watts, I would go to Compton, I would go to Linwood. You look at Watts. Watts didn't recover. It's insane. And what frustrates me, Larry, you could go back to the educational system. You can go back to government schools. I didn't learn about handling money. I didn't learn about property value. Any of this basic stuff that should be taught, in my opinion, as early as grade school or at least middle school. So it's funny. I remember the L.A. riots. I mean, clearly, it literally started with Reginald Denny, and I forget the gentleman's name that threw the brick at his head. My girlfriend at the time lived.
Damian Football Williams.
Oh, that's right, man. Great memory, Larry. Yeah, I remember my girlfriend lived right around the corner at the time. I was freaking out, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I had a ghetto fabulous mentality. I didn't like seeing that, but I was singing Ice Cube and all this kind of nonsense. But in the end, we lost. The black community lost.
That's right. And in 1992, the police chief was Daryl Gates. And throughout the history of L.A., every police chief had been a white male. Well, since then, we had back-to-back black police chiefs, Willie Williams and Bernard Parks. And right now, the LAPD reflects the demographic diversity of Los Angeles exactly. L.A. is about 40% Hispanic, as is the LAPD, 30% white, as is the LAPD, and the rest are blacks and Asian Americans, as is the LAPD. And still, you have a bunch of activists running around talking about systemic racism.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Award-winning filmmakers Stephen Barber and Matthew Housley, along with producer Tamara Henry, bring you the world's most dangerous paper route. Never-before-seen images from legendary Stars and Stripes military newspaper.
In a way, the hometown newspaper of the U.S. military.
Well, everybody read it. In the field, in particularly, people were hungry for it. And there were no punches pulled. We knew what was going on in the States.
Don't worry about the bullet with your name on it. Worry about those flying around that say to whom it may concern.
I had a choice between going to Armed Forces Network or to Stars and Stripes, and I picked Stars and Stripes.
Join Vanilla Fire Productions as they head downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait to follow the world's most dangerous paper route.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to salemnow.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway. As I traveled from Europe back to the United States over the weekend, I missed a lot of the shouting over the Ministry of Truth established at the Department of Homeland Security. And, of course, I did not watch any of the Sunday shows because I was jet lagged and just not paying any attention. But Secretary Mayorkas just got skewered by Bret Baier. And Bret didn't set out to ambush him or anything, just asked him very upfront questions on Fox News Sunday, cut number 7.
Yes, I do. And by the way, highly regarded as a subject matter expert, and I don't question her objectivity. There are people in the department who have a diverse range of views, and they're incredibly dedicated to mission. We're not the opinion police. She has testified
yes, they
before
are.
Congress
No, she's
a number
not.
of times. She's recognized
and she's not
as
incredibly
a tremendous authority, and we're very
respected for her
fortunate.
wide-ranging authority. She's unknown. And what we do know about her is come from, if you have the misjudgment to post the TikTok video she did and to sing supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, don't expect to be taken seriously. Don't expect me to take you seriously. But really, what was just, look, he made the near full Ginsburg yesterday. He was everywhere, Mayorkas. And Bret got him with one question, and I don't mean ambushed him. He just asked the obvious question. Cut number 8.
Was the Steele dossier disinformation?
It's not for me to opine on that.
You know, Americans are generally...
I must tell you, that's the best question I've heard on a Sunday show in a long time. It's unexpected, but it's completely legit. And by the way, whenever Bret puts on his glasses... It's like his poker tell. He puts on his glasses and he puts them down. Like, I have to wear glasses all the time. I can't read anything unless I have them on all the time. I can't take them off and put them on. And so when Bret puts those glasses on like this, you're in trouble. It's like a poker tell. You're in big trouble. And play it again. Cut number 8.
Was the Steele dossier disinformation?
It's not for me to opine on that.
You know, Americans are generally...
Okay, stop. What do you mean? Yes, it was disinformation. People are going to go to jail because of it. Everybody knows. If you can't answer that question, yes, it was. You don't have to comment on whether or not it's going to lead to the prosecution. You don't have to comment on anyone's guilt or innocence. The Steele dossier was disinformation, and it was intended to, and it did have an effect on the 2016 election, just not enough. What it did was hamstring Trump's first 2 years in the presidency until the Mueller investigation concluded that there had been no collusion. And that Bill Barr concluded there was no obstruction. That took like almost 3 years to get through that nightmare launched by disinformation. If you can't say that, then you can't be appointed. I can't trust your judgment on anything. And, of course, you look at the southern border and you won't be able to say it. Karl Rove summed it up on Fox News talking to Brian Kilmeade, cut number 11.
You're missing the story. You're missing the story. It has no statutory authority to step in and do something against somebody. They may be able to come out and publicly condemn them. They may be able to come out and say this is happening. But the credibility of this board is shot already by the fact they appointed this woman, and they knew it. They appointed her apparently 2 months ago, and we find out about it yesterday. The real purpose of the board is to distribute money. It does have authority to distribute money, and they've made it clear, Mayorkas has made it clear, that they're going to put a priority on minority communities who are being misled by disinformation with a special emphasis on Hispanics. Now, let's think about that for a minute. What is the one group in the electorate this year the Democrats are nervously shaking and their hands over because they're afraid that they're going to see significant drop in the support for a Democrat candidate? The Hispanic community. So this sounds like a political gambit being led by somebody who has no credibility in leading such a board concerning disinformation.
Bring me the brain of Karl Rove. I love the way he sums it up. He always leapfrogs over the headlines to the story beneath the story. The board was created to give away money. And the headline is the partisan, I don't have a description for her. All I know about her is her TikTok videos are absurd. But they put a partisan person in charge of it. But that takes your eye away from the fact that they're giving away money. Who are they giving away money to? People who will help them get elected. It's the Democratic way. It's in their DNA. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back. It's the Democrats' way, not the Democratic way. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Curious about what you're missing in the Hughiverse? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.hughiverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.hughiverse.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
To peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Here's the second tweet that they said led to his permanent suspension. Quote, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. He informed the country he wasn't going to attend Biden's inauguration. His prerogative, right? Did that incite violence? Why would you be violent if Trump didn't go to Biden's inauguration? Trust me, if you hate Trump, you didn't want Trump to go to Biden's inauguration. You were glad he didn't go." Now listen to this. This is from the Twitter. We assessed these two tweets under our glorification of violence policy, which aims to prevent the glorification of violence that could inspire others to replicate violent acts, and determined that they were highly likely to encourage and inspire people to replicate the criminal acts that took place at the Capitol on January 6th. I think Elon Musk took one look at that and said, "You're full of crap, and I'm buying your butts. I'm buying your fannies. And I'm going to show you how free speech works." And Trump needs to come back to Twitter. He has an obligation to go back to Twitter. Game, set, match. Because if you can explain or defend Twitter's permanent suspension of Donald Trump, you call me right now and we will put you to the top of the line. I promise. 1-800-655-MIKE. 800-655-6453. What a bunch of jerks.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Sticking up for little kids, not wanting them to get groomed, not wanting them to be abused, and shame on them for intervening against us. But that's what they did. That's who they are on the side of the teachers' unions. So anyway, the Friedrichs fix was unions went into the state houses that they control, the blue states, and they said, look, looks like this lawsuit's going to win and it's going to end forced unionism. We were all forced to pay unions as a condition of employment. Looks like they're going to win. So we got to pass all these fixes so that we don't lose all our people paying the unions. So what they did was, one of the fixes was that was passed in California, that every person who's in a union shop, their personal contact information is given to these government unions on a regular basis. I think it's 3 or 4 times a year, but nobody else can have their contact information. Another thing they did was they made it illegal for government employers to tell their employees their new rights, so that when they won the right to no longer pay these government unions, People don't know they have the right because their employer's not allowed to tell them. Another thing is the unions got the right to get 30 minutes with every new employee so they can harangue them and harass them and tell them all about how they need to join the union, but nobody else gets that time with those employees. And they do it on company dime, taxpayer dime, and company time. So it's just unbelievable. The unions pull all these tricks to make everything in their favor and to make it almost impossible for us to reach people with the truth that they no longer have to fund these unions. So that's why we made this movie, Whose Children Are They? That's why we started our group for Kids and Country, and I wrote a book, and we did all this just to educate people on, you don't have to pay these wicked unions anymore. And yes, they are wicked. I'll say it. What they're doing is wicked.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening this morning. The news today will be, what does the market do in response to the coming Fed meeting on Wednesday, at which it is expected that they will announce not only more rate hike increases, but also the give back or the release of their assets that they've accumulated, $9 trillion of assets to buoy the economy through twin crises of COVID and before it, the financial crisis. The Fed has to unwind that. But they have to unwind that. Look, we're going to be in a recession after 2 quarters of negative growth. We had a first quarter GDP that went down. I was stunned by that. I didn't think this would kick in. Second quarter is also going to see a contraction. Joe Biden is going to run into the teeth of a recession. In addition to reflation, no one who is not over the age of 60 remembers this. I'm 66. So I came out of college in 1978 at the height of stagflation, where the economy was not only not growing, inflation was galloping. And I've told the story many times. We bought our first house in 1985 with a 12.5% mortgage rate. And the economy is terrible, but the New York Times runs with a story today that releases memos sent to the president's political team about polling early on. Say, hey, you're doing pretty good, but, quote, immigration is a growing vulnerability for the president. John Anzalone and his team warned in a package of confidential polling, voter surveys, and recommendations compiled for the White House. Voters do not feel he has a plan to address the situation on the border, and it is starting to take a toll. Within a month, there was another stark warning. Nearly 9 in 10 registered voters are also concerned about increasing inflation, said another memo obtained by the New York Times. So somebody has leaked all the polling that the president gets. And there's always public polling, which is never as good as the private polling. And the private polling tells you what's really going on. These are from last year. This was before the debacle in Afghanistan. This was before the president did nothing to deter Putin and is trying very hard to catch up by sending whatever he can to the Ukraine. I applaud that. But it was before inflation hit, double digits. It was before GDP contracted in the first quarter. There is almost nothing the president can do except forgive student loans. Now I want to open up the phones. 1-800-520-1234. I'm writing about this for the Washington Post this week or next. I've got 2 columns in the pipeline for the Post, and one of them is about student loan forgiveness. The person who's most eloquent about this is Charles C.W. Cook, essayist and senior writer for National Review, who warns of the, quote, moral hazard of it. And the moral hazard is people will borrow money and not think they have to pay it back. They'll borrow a lot of money. Who is going to benefit? There are maybe 40 million people owed student loan debt. Okay, 40 million people out there. And the total amount of debt for college and university costs is $1.7 trillion. Forget that number. Think about the 40 million people who have to make a payment every month. They might have gotten abeyance, meaning they didn't have to pay for a while, but they've never gotten forgiveness. And while the president, if he acts quickly, will take a momentary hit by those people who did pay off their loans, and those parents who scrapped and saved, didn't take vacations, didn't go to the movies, didn't dine out, didn't do anything so they could save for college. What do those people think when the president forgives student loan debt? Now, it's also illegal. And the Department of Justice has ruled it's illegal. The Department of Education has ruled it's illegal. Nancy Pelosi said the president can't do it. That's never put, the law does not stop a desperate Democrat. We saw that when President Obama instituted the immigration reforms, in quotes, that allowed people who had entered the country without permission to remain in the country. First the Dreamers, then the parents of Dreamers, and it kept going. So the fact that it's illegal does not in any way deter the president. And so just put that aside. Don't call me up and say, well, it's illegal, he won't do it. I think he's going to do it because his numbers are so bad and the Democrats are facing such a red tidal wave, it's going to be a nightmare. 1-800-520-1234. We have Jacob in studio today learning how to screen, and we're throwing him into the fire. And I'm laughing because I'm watching my screen. There are different colors. We have 3 colors on the Hugh Hewitt Show. There's blue, which means the phone is ringing. There's, what would we call that? Yellow beige, which indicates you're being screened. And then there's green, which indicates you're ready to go. That's how it works in every studio in America. And all the lines have got people calling in. But Jacob is in his 3rd week in the studio, and he's never before. You can't learn this job unless you do this job. You can't become a screener unless and until you've screened. And that means that you got to get through all the tribbles who've been drinking all night long. All right, so that's the bad thing, is that you got them. Ed in Florida, good morning, Ed. What do you think about student loans?
Well, Mr. Hewitt, thank you for having me on. If the government could just forget about the interest rates on the student loans, and I've never heard anybody talk about that, if they could forget about the interest rates, it wouldn't cost them anything, they wouldn't hurt anybody, and they wouldn't upset anybody. But I guess that's just beyond the thinking of the people that are trying to get rid of these loans.
I would answer to you, Ed, they have long ago addressed the immediate forbearance that people needed because they discontinued payments for it. They gave you a loan pause. You didn't have to make payments now. It's probably been 2 years. So whatever the interest rate is, you ought to have saved enough money in those 2 years to not feel that. It's really about people hate the obligation. They want it relieved. Do you think he's going to do it?
I certainly hope not. I mean, I've got a niece, and she had a $45,000 loan. She forgot to pay for 3 or 4 years. That loan jumped up to over $60,000. So, and now she's stuck with that.
But do you think they should forgive that?
Heck no.
Okay, she's your niece.
Way.
What I think is that the president is going to be advised, do it, because we need any port in a storm, and there's a hurricane out there electorally. He'll do it, and there are going to be a lot of people like Ed in Florida who are going to say, no, not now, not ever, never. Matt in Louisville, what do you say, Matt?
I just say, once again, the Democrats are buying votes with our money. When those loans are forgiven, taxpayers still have to pay these ridiculously high cost of education, and that's really what ought to be addressed.
Yeah, look, Mike, Matt, people who call this show are not going to argue for forgiveness, but understand that the people who get forgiveness of their student loan debt, they're going to feel pretty good about the president, right?
Well, yeah, people that have that, but I think he's going to do it, and I hate it.
I hate it too. It is a Charles C.W. Cook, National Review, a catastrophe for the country if you forgive $1.7 trillion in debt. It sends every wrong message. That which gets rewarded gets repeated. That is the rule of life. That was incentives matter. And, if they do this, it'll be terrible. Let me go to Pennsylvania, talk to Mike. Good morning, Mike. Which part of Pennsylvania? Steelers land or Eagles land?
I'm actually a Cowboys fan.
Well, you are an odd duck.
I don't know how that came about, but not a big fan of the NFC East local team. But yeah, I was just thinking, wouldn't this affect him negatively in the bigger picture, as there's far more people who have loans from over the years that already paid them back that he's basically just going to turn his back on, and everybody's going to be all upset and basically walk the other way. I mean, sure, you can buy some votes now. However, I just think it would impact him negatively in the bigger picture.
Well, Mike, consider this. He's a one-term president. He can't run for re-election. He's too old.
True.
And so all he is looking at is, how do I keep a working majority in Congress so I can do something over the next 2 years? Right. Otherwise, they're going to have hearings out the wazoo. We're going to be having Secretary Mayorkas up there defending the Ministry of Truth every single day. We're going to have hearings into the Russian dossier. We're going to have hearings after hearings. So how do I keep my majority in the House? How do I get a senator elected so it's not 51-49 in favor of Mitch McConnell's return to power? How do I do anything? And so when everything, all you got is a hammer, everything is a nail, and it's a question of, when do I forgive that debt? And I know it will hurt him long term, except among those 34 million debtors right now. Jason in Indiana, what say you, Jason? Hi, Jason, you're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have two daughters going into college, and one of them got a half scholarship at Purdue University. The other one got a full ride at Craner Business School at Purdue. What's going to give incentives to kids to try hard and work hard during high school if this all passes?
That's a great question. I hadn't even thought about that. Right now, you have got a great incentive to go for an academic or an athletic scholarship. You got to work hard. And by the way, congratulations on Purdue's David Bell becoming a Cleveland Brown over the weekend, and that's the best thing that ever happened to David Bell out of the Boilermaker land. But you're right. Some kids, you work hard in school and during school to win the Knights of Columbus scholarship, to win any kind of a academic grant, to be a good athlete so you can get a full ride somewhere to D3 to play volleyball or whatever. You try and do whatever you have to do, and the incentive will go away. It's a moral hazard. There is, Jason. It's a nightmare. But I'm going to talk about it all week because the decision's coming soon. Thank you, Jason. Let's go to Mississippi. Gary, good morning in Mississippi. How are you?
Good morning. Love the program. I view this as just the extension of the millennial mindset who have never been held accountable for anything. And that beginning with no summer job and never having to be responsible. And this is an extension. I think should he do it, it would be very much like COVID checks. People appreciate the cash when they get them, but it doesn't provide any more confidence in the administration.
But would it help him short-term politically?
I don't think so.
I do. And that's why I think he's going to do it. But thank you very much, Gary. Love hearing from this. So let's go back to Louisville. Jeff. Hi, Jeff. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, Hugh. Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Love your show.
Thank you, sir.
I do believe it would help him, but only with his left base, because folks in the middle who have kids in college and have had to pay back loans. I pay back loans. My 5 children are paying back loans. Are going to hate this, right? We've all done the thing the right way. To your point, I had one play Division II football, University of Indianapolis. He's now in med school at Kentucky and going to be paying back med school student loans. I've got a nurse at UK. I've got another daughter that works at UK. I've got a son that joined the National Guard so that he could go to school and have his bills paid off. And I know all of those children are going to be super angry that they've done all this sacrifice, worked hard, done it all the right way. And
well, that is eloquent, Jeff. That is more eloquent than I could have been. And my kids had summer jobs and they all worked. And, we helped. We did tuition, but they had to work. And they had to work as much as possible because I want the work ethic. And they're all great workers. And I paid off my loan. Everybody who's paid off their loans is going to hate it. But short term, boy, it's going to be a relief to 34 million people. I think that's the number. Thank you, Jeff. I'll be back. More calls coming up. Let me, however, tell you about ReliefFactor.com. It's a great sponsor of the show. We're talking about paying bills. And if you want to skip doctor bills, stay in shape. If you want to live a long time, stay in shape. Exercise every day. Get out there and do something every day. Go out, walk, go out, run, go out, move, swim, bike, whatever it is that you do it every single day. You might take off a day like I did yesterday. I vegged yesterday. Didn't even watch TV, just listened to books on tape and sat around, had a great meal with some friends. Glenn and Susan, Betsy and I went out and we had a great time. And that's about all I did yesterday. Then I went to bed at 6:30 because jet lag. But today, right after the show, out and about and byways of the Beltway, because you got to stay moving. ReliefFactor.com helps you do it. Whether you got those aches and pains, whether or not your neck is killing you, your back is killing, whatever it is, exercise will help. More phone calls coming up from Minneapolis, from Virginia, from State College, Pennsylvania, from Columbus, Ohio. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I got the lines open on this Monday, May 2.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you make the internet safe, then you make the system safer for everyone. Big tech puts black people, black is of course capitalized, people of color, I'm shocked that that's not capitalized, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else. Really? Big tech puts black people, so big tech, which allows constantly for the degradation of people with white skin, but they're putting black people, people of color, that's obviously non-black, non-whites, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members. Say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Welcome back, America. I'm talking to people about student loan forgiveness, which the president is trying to get someone to say you can do it. It's illegal, but he wants to do it anyway. I want to get through 4 calls. Tony in Indianapolis, what do you say, Tony?
Hugh, guys like me who learned a trade, I'm a truck driver, but I know a lot of friends who are welders, construction guys, show up every single day. Why do we have to pay for people who make different choices? Nobody's paying for us for the choices that we made, and we show up every single day and come to find out we're pretty essential. We shouldn't have to pay for other people.
Eloquent. Where are you driving today, Tony? Where are you going this morning?
Going all the way to Indianapolis, making a big circle back to Georgetown, Kentucky.
Well, drive safely, and you're right. You're going to be paying for these kids who went and studied critical theory at law school. Thank you, Tony. Matt in Virginia, what say you, Matt?
Good morning, Hugh. While I think if you enter into an agreement, you should honor that agreement, no matter how bad you're being fleeced. But I think it's a shame of how high education costs have gotten anyways, especially if you look at like Harvard tuition costs in like the 70s and the 80s and you compare that to now. It was $1,000 in those days, and now it's $30,000-$40,000 a semester, and the only hope that we have is if we get a free ride, based on our academics or our athletic abilities. And
Matt, you're right, but I got to tell you, you're right about tuition. I paid $12,000 a year to go to Harvard in the 70s, and I don't know what it is now, but it ain't $12,000 a year. And I will tell you this, you're right, but if you give a bailout of student loans, you will encourage those colleges and universities to do nothing to economize, nothing at all. You will have rewarded the inflation, which has radically outstripped real inflation on campuses. Hey, Matt, thanks. I want to go to Jordan in Columbus, Ohio. Jordan, have you voted already in the Senate primary?
I'm sorry?
Have you voted in the Ohio Senate primary yet?
I have not yet. We're expecting our third kid in the next week, so we're a little preoccupied.
Well, Election Day is tomorrow. Don't forget to vote.
Okay. I appreciate the reminder.
What do you think about student loan debt?
It kind of seconds me. Yes, I agree that the cost is high. But you know what? My wife and I scraped for the first 3 years out of school to pay off all of our loans, free and clear. But you know what? What about, I know that it's currently not touched on, but allow people to declare bankruptcy and put some culpability in place for those loans. If you really are having a tough time paying them off, give you an option, but it's not free and clear. That's
interesting. Bankruptcy follows you for 7 years, and it's hard to get anything on credit for 7 years. But you can't bankrupt your way out of student loans right now. It's not a dischargeable debt. So I think you're right about that. Interesting perspective, Jordan. And by the way, thank you for paying off your loans. Good luck on that third baby. I've got a daughter and a daughter-in-law who are imminent as well. And it's always, you got other things on your mind. I know that. Good luck, my friend. Walter in State College, Pennsylvania. What do you say, Walter?
Yeah, hi there. I think the loans should be paid back. However, the terms of the loan should be adjusted. For instance, I attended a SUNY school, and I took a $4,000 loan out. I became a New York City cop making $31,000. I deferred the loan, and that loan turned into a $12,000 loan. I had a parent pass away, and I got a lump sum. I was able to pay it back, but I was thinking I'll have $8,000 in interest to write off. But the interest every year goes on the principal, so you can only write off what that interest for that year is, which was like $100. So I think the interest should not be put on the principal every year. The terms of the loan should be changed.
Oh, interesting. Another person who has a halfway solution. Pretty good. Walter, why aren't you at the NYPD anymore?
I vested, and I moved to State College.
Makes sense, except you have to root for the Nittany Lions instead of the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's too bad. Thank you, Walter. Paul in Florida. We're running low on time, Paul. Got to be quick.
Hey, I will make it quick. What a pleasure to talk to you. I do think and agree with you that he will probably do it. I do not believe Hugh for a second is going to buy him any votes. I think the students are going to look at him as kind of the weird uncle who's trying to buy a loyalty. They'll take the money, but they want gas back at $1.80, not at $4.50, and they're smart enough to figure that out. So take the
Well,
money, but I do not think it'll get them votes.
Interesting. Maybe they'll get votes the way that many people think they got votes. 2,000 Mules, a new documentary out by Dinesh D'Souza. Salem Media is the executive producer of it. Available at salemnow.com. Lots of people believe if you can't win an election outright, steal it. Go over and watch 2,000 Mules at salemnow.com. Kimberly in Tennessee. How are you, Kimberly?
I'm doing great, Hugh. How are you?
Good. You got about 30 seconds, though.
I'm just a single female here in Tennessee. I've never had any children, no student debt. I've worked since the day I could work. I don't feel like I should have to pay for any of this. And I know it's going to come down to us, just like
Of course it
else.
is. It's going to, or it's just going to be debt. Debt's inflationary. I'm going to talk about this all week because the president's nearing a decision, and it will be a nightmare if he says ollie ollie in free. It will be a nightmare. Stay tuned, America. Hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Straight ahead.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
They're not objective. Edward R. Murrow ought to be rolling in his grave. Now, let me just ask you flat out, and I really want to get your honest assessment of this. Are you comfortable and are you glad that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are in Congress? Or are you like my friend Mark Davis, who sort of wishes that people like MTG would sort of pump the brakes a little bit on the rhetoric, on the over-the-top, in-your-face, persona? I just think we need more Marjorie Taylor Greenes and less Mitt Romneys. I think we need fighters if we're going to have a chance.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith that one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real? Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back. This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Those who self-describe as very liberal, 39% thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every single year. 8% thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year. Those who just described as liberal, not very liberal, half of them thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. The year they did the survey, the police killed 12. Yet half of those who are liberal in this country believe the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. No wonder they're upset. If I thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year, I'd be in the streets yelling and screaming too. My point is, they are ill-informed. They are ignorant. So part of the reason that they're so angry is because they are so completely, totally ill-informed.
Keep up with what's trending on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son. You personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The kind of work that establishment Republicans are too gutless to do. They're willing to stand up and say, we've got to fight because they don't play right. They don't play fair. They're dirty. They play dirty. And if we don't stand up, we're going to lose our country. We're losing our country. We got now we're going to get a truth ministry czar under Homeland Security. Some crazy woman. If you watch that video at Salem News Channel of her singing Mary Poppins, you think I took a camera into the mental ward and filmed one of the patients. She's got an important government position, and apparently she's going to be in a position to shut you and me up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Morning Glory, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway live, back from a couple of weeks abroad. I'm glad to be back inside the Beltway where it's going to be 80 degrees today, and it's going to be hot and getting hotter for the authoritarian regimes around the world because of the work of the Athenai Institute. The founder and president of it, John Metz, joins me. Hello, John. Good morning. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about the Athenai Institute. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It looks like that to me. What is it? When did you start it? What's it do?
Well, you are pronouncing it correctly, so thank you for that. The Athenai Institute is a student-founded bipartisan nonprofit that's committed to removing the influence of the Chinese Communist Party from U.S. college campuses by eliminating financial entanglements between Chinese entities, particularly entities complicit in human rights abuses, and U.S. universities.
Now, divestment is a big deal for me. I do not want, for example, my alma mater is Harvard. They've got $40 billion endowment. They ought not to be invested in the Chinese Communist Party. That was a big movement when I was on campus in the 70s over South Africa because of their apartheid policies, which were abhorrent. Well, the Chinese Communist Party have taken it even further. They've put Uyghurs into camps. They're harvesting organs. Are you making any progress in persuading students of this?
We're making incredible progress. Just last November, we actually had our first big, what we call our Hampshire College movement, because back in 1977, at the beginning of the movement for divestment from South Africa, it was a small college in western Massachusetts called Hampshire College that really kicked off this wave of divestment by committing to divest from South Africa. Our Hampshire College moment was when the university, the Catholic University of America, agreed to audit its endowment for ties to entities complicit in the genocide of Uyghurs. So that was back in November. That's about a $300 million endowment, and since then we've passed resolutions in student governments calling for divestment at Georgetown, at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County campus, and we're really hoping to spread that movement. We have resolutions planned at other universities like George Washington University, the University of Virginia, and a lot of others. So this movement is absolutely growing, and we're proud to have the support of leading NGOs and policymakers on both sides of the aisle. Like I said, this is a bipartisan movement, and we're proud that in the letter we released on Tuesday, April 26th, to the presidents and governing boards of U.S. public flagship universities, we have the support both of 3 members of Congress and of both the youth wing of the Democratic Party and the youth wing of the Republican Party.
So let me make sure the audience knows how to find the Athenai Institute. What's the best way for them to do that, John? Your Twitter handle is the not very felicitous John_L_Metz. So that's a little bit difficult. But how about the Athenai Institute? How do they find that?
So Athenai is on Twitter at Athenai Inst, all one word. So the institute is cut off. You can also find us at our website, which is www.athenai.org.
That's very easy, athenai.org. Now, John, when you appealed to people to divest, does it mean no stocks at all out of China? How do you identify a CCP government entity?
Well, there are a few different rungs on the ladder of divestment for us. First of all, we're calling on universities to divest any direct holdings in companies that are tied to the Chinese government or complicit in its human rights abuses. But we're also calling for universities to reduce their exposure to China in other ways. That includes any kind of financial entanglement from passive investments in index funds and mutual funds that are heavily exposed to China. It includes research partnerships that in many cases don't have the necessary guardrails in place to ensure that they're not putting technology in the wrong hands, in the hands of the Chinese government, which is using things like facial recognition software to identify Uyghurs and keep them in camps. And it also includes other financial linkages. In January 2019, the then Deputy Secretary of Education testified that almost 70% of colleges that receive Chinese government funding for Confucius Institutes, which are one of the kinds of financial linkages we're pointing out, never reported those contributions to the Department of Education, which is a violation of federal law. 2 years ago, the U.S. Department of Education also reported that between 2013 and 2020, 115 U.S. colleges received almost $1 billion in gifts and contracts from Chinese sources, and that's only what was disclosed. So the
John,
extent of
people
the
always
ties here is incredible.
People always want to know, why are you doing this? You're a young guy. You can do anything you want. You can go anywhere you want. You've got background. You're obviously very well spoken on the Chinese Communist Party and the entanglement of companies with the central government and the CCP. Why are you doing this?
Well, I think it's increasingly important now, given that the Chinese government has identified U.S. college campuses as one of its key targets, that people my age, people who are in college or who recently graduated, people who care about the leadership of U.S. academic institutions, who care about their sort of storied history of cultivating, not just sort of the next generation of leaders, but also some of the leading figures in science and technology. At the end of the day, these institutions have incredible potential to continue to play that role. But if we allow authoritarian governments like the Chinese government, like the Chinese Communist Party, to influence what students can and can't talk about on campus, to, in many cases, monitor and even threaten students' study on U.S. college campuses, to use U.S. college campuses as targets for espionage. All of these things undermine the leadership of U.S. academic institutions, and they undermine the ability of people my age to use those institutions as places where we can cultivate our own leadership. So, this is it's I think increasingly clear to anyone who's paying attention that this is a government that we can't trust to be a responsible actor on the world stage, and students, I'm glad to say, are waking up to that.
Now, college campuses are soft targets. They really are, because they're always in need of money. They always want endowed professorships, Confucius Institutes. You need someone like Jim Banks in Indiana, who said, as surely as night follows day, we will cut off funding to Indiana schools unless you shutter your Confucius Institute, University of Indiana, and they did. But how often do they just simply ignore what China is doing to the Uyghurs? And you might want to also tell the audience what they are doing to the Uyghurs. I've covered it a lot, but there are new listeners. You explain.
Well, so I'll address the second part of that first. The situation for Uyghurs in China is getting worse really by the day. It involves the forced detention of millions of Uyghurs. It involves widespread forced sterilization, the separation of families, and in many cases the forced marriage of Uyghur women to Han Chinese men. Involves efforts to basically abolish the Uyghur religion and prevent the use of the Uyghur language. So it's really far-reaching, and what is particularly important, I think, for your audience to be aware of is that big business is absolutely complicit in this. Multi-billion-dollar corporations based in the U.S., in China, in Europe, they use Uyghur forced labor. Everything from the screen on an iPhone to the door of a subway car in any of the major cities in the country has the potential to have been produced by Uyghur forced labor. So we're talking about more than cotton and textiles, which are sort of the obvious sort of targets, and that's the industry I think people are most aware of having these ties to Uyghur forced labor, but it does go beyond that.
Last question, John. I want to make sure I get this in. When you put up a card table at the university, which is the traditional way of bringing in students, who stops? Who are you bringing in? Who are you
Well, we like to target students who are politically engaged. We're going to be politically engaged regardless of what we do. So there are students who are now chapter leaders for Athenai who are incredibly active in the college Democrats, in the college Republicans. There are students who maybe have a personal connection to the issue because maybe they were born in Hong Kong, or they're of Tibetan descent or Uyghur descent, and they've seen firsthand how the abuses of the Chinese Communist Party have impacted their families. their friends back home. So it really is a big tent in the truest sense of the word. And I want to emphasize.
Good luck to you. Athenai.org. That's spelled Athenai. Athen, Athen, AI.org. Athenai.org. John Metz, thank you. We'll check back with you. May you grow quickly. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith. That one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real? Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back. This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Those who self-describe as very liberal, 39% thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every single year. 8% thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year. Those who just described as liberal, not very liberal, half of them thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. The year they did the survey, the police killed 12. Yet half of those who are liberal in this country believe the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. No wonder they're upset. If I thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year, I'd be in the streets yelling and screaming too. My point is, they are ill-informed. They are ignorant. So part of the reason that they're so angry is because they are so completely, totally ill-informed.
Keep up with what's trending on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son. You personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The kind of work that establishment Republicans are too gutless to do. They're willing to stand up and say, we've got to fight because they don't play right. They don't play fair. They're dirty. They play dirty. And if we don't stand up, we're going to lose our country. We're losing our country. We got now we're going to get a truth ministry czar under Homeland Security. Some crazy woman. If you watch that video at Salem News Channel of her singing Mary Poppins, you think I took a camera into the mental ward and filmed one of the patients. She's got an important government position, and apparently she's going to be in a position to shut you and me up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show. I hope you're on your way to work. Hope you had a great weekend. Beautiful day inside the Beltway. I don't know what it's like wherever you are, but it is gorgeous here in Washington, D.C. and the environs around it. And so America's bureaucrats will be going to work today to make your life better and easier, I'm sure. One of the things I want them to work on is passport control at Dulles. If I didn't have COVID ever before, I probably have it now. When you stand with hundreds, maybe 1,000 people for an hour and 10 minutes to go through passport control, then you realize that the government's not really very good at doing anything. Because I'm an American, and, the passport's pretty well used, and, of course, it took me 1 second to go through once I got there. But they're looking for COVID negative tests. That's what they're looking for. They want you to have a piece of paper that say you got a negative test within 24 hours of travel, which I had, cost 60 euros, but I got it, so did the fetching Mrs. Hewitt. But, of course, whenever you have to produce a second piece of paper, and lots of people don't even know about this, and they're Americans. You got to let them in. But I don't know what it was, but I have never seen anything like that. And so when you're worried about COVID spreading, you don't really want to put hundreds of people in a line that have just returned from abroad. If you don't want a variant to get in, you might just wave them on through. And if you don't wave them on through, that variant's going to be everywhere. And so I recommend, as I always do, go get your second booster. Big story in the Washington Post this morning. This is very interesting. Virus deniers are going or vax deniers are going to seize on this. The death rate is now equal between those who have been vaxxed and those who haven't been vaxxed, about 75. And that's because your immunity from vaccination diminishes over time. And the first booster, if you got it more than 6 months ago, that's diminished. And if you're just worried about having to get a booster shot again and again and again, I'm telling you, yeah, that's what you might have to do for a period of time certain if you don't want to end up, as many of these sad people are in great shape, get sick and pass away, and it's very unfortunate. My favorite tweet of the weekend, though, I don't want it to pass without. The New York Times spent months, a year, trying to make Tucker Carlson into a racist. I've known Tucker. Tucker is a friend of mine. I've worked with Tucker. Tucker is not a racist. He's not a white nationalist. He runs a TV talk show. It's very popular. It's the most popular show on cable news. I'll be on Special Report tonight, and we'll have 2.5, 3 million people watch. And Tucker will have another 1 million people watching whenever he comes on. I never watch the show because I'm always asleep or about to go to sleep when Tucker comes on. It's the last show in the opinion lineup. And so I never see it. But I know him, and he's not a racist. And so there's a big story on him, American nationalist. It's on the front page of the New York Times, Sunday edition yesterday. Above the fold, Sunday used to matter. Doesn't matter as much anymore because they're just preaching to their own left-wing choir. And Tucker, God bless him, took a photo of the paper and the story about him, held it up, and put it on Twitter. And I just say, bravo, Tucker. And I tweeted that out, and hundreds of you retweeted it and liked it, and good for you. You just have to laugh at the desperation among America's elite media. And boy, are they desperate. You know who else is desperate? People who need to get a loan. And if you are one of them, you know the 10-year Treasury is up to 2.887. That is not the interest rate you will get on your loan. It was about 4 months ago. But now, that's when the 10-year bond was at 1.5%. You usually pay at least 1.5 points above the 10-year Treasury for a 30-year fixed or a 20-year fixed or a 15-year fixed. One of our guides at Normandy had a 1% loan. And I said, boy, did you hit the market right. And, of course, there's cost to refinancing, so everyone doesn't run out and refinance. But if you're going to buy a house and you were put off by rising rising home prices are still going up. You still got to get a loan unless you're going to pay cash, and that's pretty hard to do. Here's what you do. You go to andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172 is their phone number. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, a great sponsor of this show, and you say, I need a loan. What can you do for me? It's that simple. They will then do the legwork. They will get back to you right away, 888-888-1172. They'll give you the best rate available to them. They are extremely efficient. They are extremely quick, and it's soup to nuts because they are a lender. They are not a broker. They don't send you out, but they have every rate available to them. They can work with you. If you got credit things that will help you, go to andrewandtodd.com. Come right back. Tom Rogan of the Washington Examiner joins me because there's a brand new initiative underway over at the Washington Examiner. I want you to know about American Renewal, and I'll tell you about it when we come back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
And Shapiro or I mean, I could, the whole list or.
Because then you don't have the caricatured version of conservatives.
That's right. Yes, exactly. It's shattering.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. So you were with police, and by the way, I was going to add Dave Rubin as just as an example. I mean, the list. Forgive me, all my wonderful conservative public figures whose names I don't, just because it's endless. They're basically a very fine group of people. They're basically happier as well in keeping with this. But police, that's the biggest risk. I did a ride along with the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department. Now, I was pro-police because I believe the police are the fine line between barbarity and civilization. That's why they're a policeman. If there was no barbarity, we would not need any police. It's just obvious. And I saw the way they took interest in kids in the inner city, young black kids who came over and hugged them, that the press never covers. They're the fathers that these kids don't have. You're nodding. Is that because you had that too?
Yeah, I saw how much the police cared for members of their community, knew people by name. I just saw a lot of love. And I think that anyone who, before they judge police, they should go on a ride along because their mind might change.
That is a great idea.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live inside the Beltway. Tom Rogan writes for the Washington Examiner. He has a new project over there. If you don't read Tom Rogan, then you're not really aware of what's going on the international security front. Tom R. Tweets is his Twitter feed. Good morning, Tom. Welcome back. How are you?
Great to be with you, Hugh. Thank you for those kind words.
Well, I am very, very interested in the Renewing America website. The Washington Examiner has long been a favorite of people, but Restoring America, it's Restoring America, is a new initiative. Tell us about Restoring America. I've already bookmarked it. I'm going to be checking it every morning to see what you put up there. Tell us about it.
Well, thank you for that. So the basic premise of Restoring America is to provide a intellectual, well-written series of articles, essentially defending traditional values of the United States in terms of freedom, the idea of communities, of families, of religious liberty, those principles that I think a lot of conservatives would naturally align behind, the expansion of opportunity versus perhaps some of the more varied interpretations of what justice and opportunity mean from the left. So it's both, I think, a defensive idea in terms of saying, no, these things are good. American values, centrally, even though our history has its darker moments, are inherently good. And also promoting new ideas on the front of kind of conservative thinking and again, just outlining the importance of those values to the nation's identity.
Now, Tom Rogan, you are in the tradition of Christopher Hitchens and Charles C.W. Cook, Brits educated in Britain who come to the Beltway and provide perspective that people perhaps who have been educated in the government schools of America don't have. It comes down to this, and I discussed this with Matt Continetti last week about his book, The Right. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the American military. These are the three legs of the stool. You need the Declaration, that's the apple of gold. You need the frame of silver, which is the Constitution, and you need the American military to defend both. What other essentials does Restoring America seek to hold up and underscore as really essential to the nature of our country?
Yeah, and for me, look, I'm actually a dual citizen. I grew up. My father, is American, and these values were very important in terms of my father's inculcation of my brothers and I when we were growing up. So we kind of, even though we were, across the Atlantic, got a kind of first-hand view of it. But I think Restoring America's critical elements, really beyond those three pillars that you, I think, rightly identify. We think about religious liberty. We think about the opportunity of people to speak freely, debate freely, do so in a civil way instead of being shut down. The idea of, more balance in the media. Things that essentially, we want to be a place really at Restoring America where people can come and, even if they disagree with a particular article, be provoked to think about an issue, but also realize that a lot of this stuff is quite basic, right? That the foundational principles of the United States have endured and are foundational because, in the end, they make a lot of sense in enabling people across the country to pursue, happiness, to live better lives. And it's really about just making clear that a lot of the stuff that we're hearing, quite frankly, from the left is not in alignment with, I think, what most Americans see as in their better interest.
Tom Rogan, I don't know if you saw Elon Musk's tweet over the weekend where he used a little graph, left and right, and he pointed out the left has gone way left and the right has stayed pretty much where it is, and as a result, he's become more conservative simply because the window moved. Do you agree with that assessment in the last 20 years that the window of what is on the table for discussion in America has radically shifted to the left?
I think when you see, especially the left's, I think, penchant for shutting down debate, for really changing the contours of what is acceptable, and I think the most striking example of this we've seen recently is the appointment of this disinformation office at the DHS. I mean, on what planet is there no understanding of history in the Constitution that the United States government should not be telling people what is information, disinformation, especially in the context that people running that program are some of the same that have said things like the Hunter Biden laptop, etc., are disinformation, which turn out, of course, to be the exact opposite. And so I think in that idea of the left's tolerance for dialogue, I think has clearly shifted, and I think as much as there are some concerns on the right with that, what's quite striking is the degree to which that tolerance for debate has shifted at the most establishment, formal levels of political media, business power.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I'm going to ask you a question that I think I know the answer to, but I don't know. I don't want people to think I'm making this up. Were you at the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Saturday night?
I was not, no.
Okay.
No.
And I wasn't either. I wasn't invited. I went 6 years ago and said, this is the regime. This is the gathering in of the overclass. And I'm using that advisedly. It's just a permanent government. I don't think it's a deep state like Turkey has or like Russia has. I think it's an overclass. And they get together once a year and they celebrate their overclassness. And it's not very classy, but it is dominant. You did not hear much about the founding values that you would see held up at Restoring America. So my question is, who is going to write for Restoring America? Because you can't, to go to that dinner is almost to take you off of Tom Rogan's radar, I think.
Well, so, obviously, I think one of the issues here, people like Phil Wegman, our Examiner writers, of course, there's some great reporters, but that groupthink element, I think, look at the White House press briefing room, right, that it does pervade. So Restoring America, it is a work in progress. What we want to do is just build up some of the top thinkers in, conservative thought, both on the kind of think tank side, but in media. We've had politicians already. Senator Rubio has written for us. Andy McCarthy, I hope, is going to be starting writing for us. Deborah So on some of the social policy areas. John Bolton's done a piece. So really what we want to do is just try to attract these thinkers and say to them, one of my key pitches is, I can pay people to do it, which they deserve for their time. And secondly, I'm not going to edit you, and my colleagues are not going to edit you excessively. We want you to make a robust argument and feel free to kind of run with it. Again, because what is the central plank of Restoring America as idea? It's, free debate, dialogue, discussion, getting the best ideas out there and, seeing which ones, grab hold of people's hearts and minds.
So I want people to bookmark Restoring America. If you simply go to DC Examiner and find, or go to Tom R. Tweets, what's the easiest way to bookmark Restoring America, Tom?
Yes, so thank you for that. So the best way is to go to the Washington Examiner website, and then there's at the top, about just off the center to the right, at the top of the page, you'll see a Restoring America tab, and just click on that, and that'll take you right there, and the various sections you can go through, each identified in terms of different areas of public policy. And it's that simple, and it's a nice, clean website, no ads, and, we just want to make it a great user experience.
I noticed that. There are no pop-ups. The great bane of doing anything on conservative websites is they have to pay for themselves, right? So they have pop-up ads all the time, and I saw Restoring America was not that. How often are you updating content at Restoring America?
So we're updating every day. As we get new pieces in there, we're putting them up with this carousel at the top, which kind of outlines 4 pieces that we think is sort of driving a bit of the coverage on the site each day. And yeah, so it's a very regularly updated website, and we're aiming for at least 20 new fresh pieces getting up there every day.
Oh my gosh, that's terrific. Restoring America is over at DC Examiner, at Washington Examiner. Now, Tom, I am a big believer in holding up younger people. You're one of the younger people, but there are lots of people who are under 40, like Charles C.W. Cook at the National Review, Guy Benson, Mary Catherine Ham. The conservative movement has to regenerate from George William F. Buckley, and I dare say myself. I'm 66, right? I can't keep doing this forever, and I don't plan on it. So are you biased towards younger voices, and how do you vet them for credibility?
That's a fantastic question. So I think, as we build in, I want both, right? I want to hit all the different sections, because then we have both experience and that kind of youthful creativity. But the idea of vetting really, I suppose, we have a writer today. We'll have Kelly Neidert, who was a college student who was almost physically attacked, actually, frankly, was physically attacked for trying to hold an event on her campus. It's a question of engaging, right? Emailing, talking on the phone, seeing the links to the profile, and sometimes you've got to roll the dice, because this isn't someone who has written somewhere before, but ultimately that's the way it has to go.
Tom, Rogan, tell me the genesis of the project. I mean, whose brainchild was it, and how did it come to fruition?
So I think ultimately it was a part of a discussion between our editor-in-chief, Hugo Gurdon, and some of the Clarity Media, which is the sort of ownership of Washington Examiner out in Colorado, just thinking, what on that kind of opinion, thought, and in terms of, we do put news stories up that have a relevance to Restoring America, even if they are news stories first. How can the Washington Examiner essentially try and engage in this idea space and both try and rebut some of the orthodoxy of the new left, but also show, look, conservatism has traditionally found a lot of support, not because it's populist and people are just like waving flags, but because the flags waving means something deeper, and these ideas mean something. Freedom matters to people, and trying to flesh out some of the intellectual arguments there, at whether that's about tax policy, criminal justice, foreign policy, obviously America's leadership in the world, once again being proven as critical. These various elements, again, it's about just making sure that we're out there engaged in the debate. Otherwise, the debate, frankly, doesn't have the kind of balance that it needs.
Vigor. It needs vigor. And I go back to, and I'll close here. Henry Kissinger has a new book out. I got the advanced copy of it. He writes a lot about 1968, when America's elites gave up on the war they started, Vietnam, and the crash down that happened. And it took renewal, and it took 10 years, Tom Rogan. Is the Examiner committed? This can't just be a flash in the... It's just got to stick until it spreads like kudzu across the United States. Restoring America is the project. How is the commitment real and firm?
It's absolutely real and firm, and this is a long-term thing that I think I'm highly confident I am not going to be the sole person, or Kaylee McGee, who's an excellent writer and editor who works with me. This will go long beyond us, and certainly every day Hugo Gurdon is calling me into his office to say, right, what are we doing? What about this? Let's push it.
Yeah, so, faster and more, Tom. Faster and more. I appreciate your comeback and update me. Tom Rogan. Follow him on Twitter at Tom R. Tweets, and go bookmark Restoring America. Also, thank you very much, Tom. I also want to thank everyone at ReliefFactor.com for standing by us so that we can, over 22 years, do this every single morning, Monday through Friday. And that's what it takes. ReliefFactor.com is what it takes to stay in great shape, to stay pain-free, to take nature's anti-inflammatories, to get you out there on the highways and byways of wherever you are, like I will be, or at home in your gym, or on your Peloton, or whatever it is you do. You'll ache a little bit afterwards. ReliefFactor.com will help you with that. $19.95 gets you started. ReliefFactor.com. I'm joined next by Josh Kraushaar on the Ohio Senate race. Stay tuned.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Yeah, you know, also I'm thinking of, as you speak about the effects that riots have on cities that are basically left behind. Think of the Watts riots. I mean, listen. Right. I would go to Watts. I would go to Compton. I would go to Linwood. You look at Watts. Watts didn't recover. It's insane. And what frustrates me, Larry, you could go back to the educational system. You can go back to government schools. I didn't learn about handling money. I didn't learn about property value. Any of this basic stuff that should be taught, in my opinion, as early as grade school or at least middle school. So it's funny. I remember the L.A. riots. I mean, clearly, it literally started with Reginald Denny, and I forget the gentleman's name that threw the brick at his head. My girlfriend at the time lived.
Damian Football Williams.
Oh, that's right, man. Great memory, Larry. Yeah, I remember my girlfriend lived right around the corner at the time. I was freaking out, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I had a ghetto fabulous mentality. I didn't like seeing that, but I was singing Ice Cube and all this kind of nonsense. But in the end, we lost. The black community lost.
That's right. And in 1992, the police chief was Daryl Gates. And throughout the history of L.A., every police chief had been a white male. Well, since then, we had back-to-back black police chiefs, Willie Williams and Bernard Parks. And right now, the LAPD reflects the demographic diversity of Los Angeles exactly. L.A. is about 40% Hispanic, as is the LAPD, 30% white, as is the LAPD, and the rest are blacks and Asian Americans, as is the LAPD. And still, you have a bunch of activists running around talking about systemic racism.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to SalemNow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Of the U.S. military.
Well, everybody read it. In the field, in particularly, people were hungry for it. And there were no punches pulled. We knew what was going on in the state.
Don't worry about the bullet with your name on it. Worry about those flying around that say to whom it may concern.
I had a choice between going to Armed Forces Network or to Stars and Stripes, and I picked Stars and Stripes.
Join Vanilla Fire Productions as they head downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait to follow the world's
Go to SalemNow.com.